I'm Lauren with Pack Hacker, and in this video we're taking a detailed look at the Gossamer Gear Aero Jet, which I've been testing for the last 3 weeks. Let's dive in. This thing's strong suit is definitely its lightweight construction. So this is only 2.5 pounds when it's empty, which is much lighter than a lot of travel backpacks that usually are hover around the 3.5 to 4 pound. And with this, I could definitely feel that even when it was super loaded up. And I took this on a 2.5 week trip. I was in Tanzania, and I could feel that even when the bag was really, really full, the fact that the bag was lightweight was very apparent because it didn't feel as bulky on me, and it held up really well actually. So this is a 210D recycled Robic nylon, and there's a 70D recycled Robic nylon liner, and then this mesh on the outside is a polyester isometric grid mesh, which the mesh I was actually really impressed with. I'm gonna bring it closer so you can see it. The mesh I was very impressed with because I had this front mesh pocket. Whenever I had this bag and I was tossing it around, I always shoved my kind of dirtier over jacket in there. And I actually checked this bag on the way home, and whenever it ended up in the checked compartment of an airplane, this held up super well. It never, the shirt underneath wasn't damaged or anything like that. There's a few scuff marks along the mesh, but you honestly have to really look for them. Another thing that I found really impressive about this was how well it cleaned up. I wish I had a picture of it. One of the days that we were driving around, we had the windows open. It was so dusty in the car. This was basically a light brown color by the time I got home, or we got back to our accommodations, and all I had to do was take a baby wipe to it, and it wiped off perfectly clean. You can't really even see where it was, maybe a little bit in the divots of these zippers, but I think with the actual construction of this, I was very, very impressed, which isn't necessarily a surprise because Gossamer Gear is a great, well-constructed brand. They're really known for their materials being very lightweight. But overall, the amount of stress that I put this bag through, it held up super, super well. So that was really nice. In terms of other external features on the outside here, we have these loops on the very edges. If you wanted to attach gear or maybe even compression straps to really lock it down, you could. I didn't really find a need for them, but they're there if you want them. We also have carry handles. So this side carry handle here is the only side carry handle, and it has a little bit of padding, which is nice. If I was going to be carrying it long distances, I was going to be grabbing it by here because this top carry handle doesn't have any padding, and whenever I would carry it by this top carry handle, it just felt a little bit like the bag was very heavy to carry that way. So when it was full, I mostly carried it by the side. This was more for if I was hanging it up in the bathroom off of a stall door or something like that. We also just have pretty simple logo action. It's just a little bit of a patch on the front here. Hardware is YKK zippers across the board. There's also shrink tube ends of these zipper pulls, just basic paracord zipper pulls, but these shrink tubes just give you a little bit more grip. I found it pretty handy. I really stressed this bag. I think it to its absolute possible max in terms of gear storage, and even when I had to essentially MMA fight the bag closed and lay down on top of it in order to get the zippers to move together, if they could zip, they would zip, and it never really felt like they were going to burst. If they wouldn't close, then it was more about the fact that I'd have to rearrange the bag more than the fact that the zippers, I was worried about them breaking, if that makes sense. They're also lockable, so if you want to stick your own TSA lock through there, you totally can. The side carry handle as well is where I attached my luggage tag, and then I just kind of tucked it into the water bottle pocket, which is made with that same mesh material. We'll talk about that in a second. But overall feels very well made. Reflective accent at the base too, to just give you a little bit of added visibility. I think it looks very sleek. It was also really easy to spot in the airport. I always knew which bag was mine. My only qualm really comes down to the actual packability of this thing, which we'll get into in a bit when I start talking about the inside packing compartments. I was surprised at how comfortable I found the harness system considering how basic it is. So with these shoulder straps here, there's not a ton of padding. You can see it's maybe maybe an inch there, a little bit more up at the top here specifically, just because where this part hits, it's like where it would hit your neck. That just adds a little bit of like soft comfortability. But the straps themselves, like they have enough structure to them to where they weren't like collapsing and like not supporting the weight of the bag, but they weren't so stiff that they couldn't like move with my shoulders. So I found them to be very comfortable. I also, there are points here where you can attach their fast belt, which is sold separately. I didn't find myself needing it. The heaviest this got was 10.5 kilograms, which is like around 22 pounds. And with that, like the sternum strap was actually perfectly fine in order to take the weight off my shoulders. So the sternum strap really did carry quite literally a lot of weight for me. And it's on a sliding rail system, so it was very easy to adjust and kind of find the fit that worked best for me. So I was, overall pretty surprised at how comfortable I found this. Same with this back panel. It's a 3D mesh back panel. I found it to be comfortable and breathable enough. I never really got overly hot when I was carrying this. And there is a luggage pass-through as well if that's something that you are into and you want to add this on top of your rolling luggage. So this is the bag when it's on. I am 5'6", and for me, I have a 16.5-inch torso. It definitely is on the longer side, but even so, when I was walking around with it, it didn't feel like overly stiff or uncomfortable. Like I mentioned, that mesh padding on the back added like a decent amount of comfort for me, and the sternum strap really worked to take the weight off of my shoulders. Maybe I could have done with like load lifters, and that like hip belt definitely would have helped a lot, but I didn't feel like it would have helped enough for me to want to purchase it separately. So with this, when I was carrying it through the airports, there was one time where we were at an airport for 12 hours and I had to carry this thing with me the entire time, and it wasn't really that much of a bother. So with this, I would say like I was surprised at how comfortable it was, but I think the fact that the bag is so lightweight does it a lot of favors. If you're finding this video helpful, hit subscribe so we can keep making content to help you travel smarter. We'll look at some external pockets here or some secondary compartments. On the back here, we have a hidden spot. This is RFID protected. It's a little zippered pocket, a good spot for a passport. I personally just kept my passport like on my sling on my person, like on my front. So if you wanted to put it here, you totally could. Otherwise, like I'd keep it to flat items, but otherwise, like if you don't use it, you don't really even notice that that pocket is there. The other thing on this back panel area is actually the shoulder strap pockets. So these here, I straight up forgot they existed 95% of the time. If you do put a phone in here, I have an iPhone 14 or 13, I noticed that it could just feel a little bit stiff, like next to my arm. So I don't really love pockets like this in general, but if you do like pockets like this, either to carry like a snack or like maybe just to like slip your wallet in as you're moving through somewhere, you could probably, you could stick your passport in here really quickly as you're going through security. If you like having a pocket like this for quick grabs, these are really effective, very stretchy mesh, so found them more than useful if I did remember to use them. Other than that, it's pretty simple. We've just got a water bottle pocket on the exterior here. We've got one on either side. With this is a 21-ounce Hydro Flask. You can see it fits in there very comfortably, but I actually traveled with this 30-ounce Awala. So just kind of as a size reference, we've got that one in there. And then if I go and I stick my 30-ounce Awala in there, it goes down pretty much the same amount and it feels very secure. So you can definitely get a larger bottle in there, which I think just is a testament to the stretchiness of that mesh, which I found to be a huge benefit, because like with that, you can see that's on the other side too. The same mesh is on the front. So this mesh, like I mentioned, this is where I put, this was like the jacket cover that I used like on all of our like driving days, and it got very, very dusty. So I didn't want it in the bag with all of my stuff. So I would just shove it in here. I didn't really care that it got wrinkly, but we did have to check this bag on a couple of different smaller flights that this wouldn't fit as a carry-on. And with this being in the front, I had no issues with this like tearing or anything. So it feels very durable and sturdy, which I think is something that you really need your mesh to be if it's going to be effective. Just keep in mind that packing out this bag too much in general, but specifically this front mesh pocket, is going to probably take it out of like personal item restrictions. So definitely like check the depth of the bag once you get it all loaded up, because that's really like the biggest point where it could get a little bit too packed out, I guess. On the front, there's also a little like half moon zipper up top. This is where I would put something like a wallet. I also have AirPods in here, I think. And then this loofah, which it's called a noofa, and I forgot to pack it and then was leaving and noticed that it was still out, and so I just shoved it in this top pocket, which is kind of mostly what I used that pocket for, honestly. I also used it for like on the plane, if I wanted to change into compression socks when we actually got there, I would put the compression socks here. But it kind of has a decent amount of its own packing space. Like you can see, if I turn the bag actually on its side, you can see if I flatten it down, it flattens well. And then if I put my hand in there, I can get like a couple of inches worth of packing space. So it definitely feels like a roomy pocket if you need to use it, but if you don't, it doesn't like look weird. And then we have the laptop compartment, which is also lockable. With this here, it fits up to a 17-inch device. I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro in here and it fit perfectly fine. There's also a tablet sleeve and a very substantial false bottom. Like the false bottom is like here, I think, in the bottom of the bag is like all the way down here. So I didn't have any issues with like my devices feeling unprotected or anything like that. The only thing in this pocket I didn't really use was there's a zippered pocket down here, and you can see I'm having a hard time even showing you, and I had a hard time getting to it. So especially when the laptop was in here, like I'm pushing this back panel out, but if this is, let me put the laptop back in. See, if the laptop's in there, I have a really hard time actually getting down there. So this zippered pocket is designed for tech gear. I just think it's just too low down in my opinion. I think if I was gonna actually, yeah, I mean, that's like way too difficult for me. I didn't end up using this pocket at all. If I was gonna use a pocket, I would want it to be up here. And we have tested a few bags that have those up there, and it's just easier to get to your stuff. That's just way too far down, especially when this bag is full, which I ran into a lot in terms of like access can be a little bit tough. But in here there is a hidden spot for an air tag, which is right there. You can't really see it, but I have a tile tracker in there right now and it fits perfectly fine. So definitely still have a decent amount of storage space in there, just maybe find a different spot for your tech, which is what I did. So now into the main compartment. This is a kind of like clamshell opening situation. It opens this way here, and you can see the way that the bag is zippered, it's at like an angle, right? So you have big bucket space here, and then it like tapers up at the top, and then you have like kind of bigger bucket space here, and it tapers up at the top, and the bag itself tapers up as you go up. This taper design was kind of my nightmare, honestly, with this side specifically. So I'm going to show you this like packed, this pack side first. This is just like a mesh material. It's see-through, but it's not, it's like you can see the larger kind of grid pattern there, but then in between the grid pattern is like a very, very small grid pattern too. So nothing's going to slip through. Again, everything feels very sturdy, durable, well made. It's just the packing convenience got a little bit, became a bit of a nuisance. So with this, I have a pair of sandals down here at the bottom. I wear a women's size 8. Then I have a large packing cube here. These are all of my pants. I had 3 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of shorts, and then I had a dress in here as well. And then in this is all of my tops. And in here I had 2 long sleeve shirts, a t-shirt, and then I think like 5 or 6 tank tops, honestly. So this was 2.5 weeks worth of clothing. I reused items. We washed items as we went, like in the shower or whatever. We paid for laundry one time after, everything was like really dirty after some physical activity. So with that in mind, you might be able to pack even less than I did, because I could have gone without like maybe 2 or 3 items of clothing I just wasn't sure I needed. But you can see that this compartment's pretty much full. I use packing cubes because I didn't want to have to deal with like the tediousness. We were going to be moving locations a lot, so I didn't want to have to I wanted packing cubes instead of just having all of my items individually placed, because I felt like that was going to be harder to keep everything like perfectly arranged. So I'm glad that I did that. It is compatible. These are Peak Design packing cubes, but it is compatible with Gossamer Gears. But I had no issues with this side of things. This side of things was great. Whenever I packed this side of things, I was like, cool, we're cruising. When I got over to this side, however, is when it got dicey. So with these top pockets, these were great. I use them for socks. I put like socks and underwear in one. This top one I had, I wear 1-a-day contacts, so I put my 1-a-day contacts up here, and then any like socks or underwear I didn't get to wash before we moved to our next location went up here. So that was fine. That moved over perfectly okay. I didn't really have any issues with like these pockets being too full and impacting packability. What did impact packability was this here. So when I open this up, you can see that it's just an open bucket space. And at first glance, this looks like fine, whatever. I had this packed with more items than are currently here. I had an extra pouch. I had a like sun hat. I had some like wipes. Like I mentioned, I had baby wipes to like wipe gear down. We brought those along, and those were in here. And by the time I got everything packed in here, it was so tight, but it was only tight because of this bottom part. If you look here, you can see that it's like falling down. And that happened no matter how I packed this bag. If I packed this bag when this side was empty or whatever, it was just always like this, and there's like a gap almost. So if this is laying completely flat, there's a gap between like here and the ground or like the tabletop or wherever you're packing it. And what ended up happening a lot is that in order for me to get everything in here, I needed to have my bag configured in a very specific way. And one of the ways was that like the toiletry bag that I had right here had to flip over and perfectly match like this location so that they would fit nicely in order for me to make use of all of this space. But by the time I got everything in here and then zipped it up, like it wasn't actually where I needed it to be. It was like here instead of down here. So every single time I zipped up this compartment, I had to put this up and then just shake it so that everything moved down and then close the bag. But sometimes it would shake the wrong way and then things would be in the wrong positioning. So what I would have to do is I would have to open it back up, shift things around, flatten them out, and then go like this, and then kind of push it this way. And it just, no matter what I did, no matter how empty it was or how full it was, by the time I actually flipped it over, something was in the wrong spot. And I kind of narrowed it down to being the fact that when you look at this side here, it just, even if I wanted to put something here, and like put it at the very, very base, even if I loaded as much stuff in here as I possibly could, it always fell down, it always slipped out of place. So I found that to be the most annoying thing about this. I don't know what the solution would be there. You know, we're not bag designers, but it was definitely something that got tedious after, you know, weeks of unpacking and repacking and kind of moving my bag around. It got kind of annoying to have to deal with that. So I would say that was like the biggest thing that would make me kind of second guess getting this bag, honestly. I think a lot of the other things about it are really great. The materials are awesome. The comfortability, I think, is pretty on par with what you would want if you're gonna be long-term traveling. It's just that packability of this side of the bag specifically that just sort of got in the way in terms of like convenience and me enjoying using the bag versus being like frustrated with it. So there you have it, the Gossamer Gear Aero Jet. Thanks for keeping it here at Pack Hacker, your guide to smarter travel, and we'll see you in the next one.